Hello. So in this video we're going to look at shape layer and create some vector graphics in After Effects and animate them and do stuff. So I've created a composition which is 720 by 1280, and then I'm going to go to layer and make a new shape layer. Oh, I've already made one. Let's just delete that one. Okay, shape layer 2. So with that, if you go to the toolbar at the top here where it says rectangle tool, if you click on that and hold down the mouse button, you can get these other shapes here. So let's just make a few shapes. So you can click and drag, and here I've made a graded rectangle. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we can see that better. So at the top here, I've got the parameters for the fill and the stroke. So if I click on fill, let's just drag this window up here because it's popped down there. So you can either have it no fill, a solid color, a linear gradient, or a radial gradient. So like a circle there. If you want to change the color, so you click on OK. The little box next to it, you can click on that. Everything's going to appear down the bottom now. I'll have to drag it back up. And you can select your color, like so. If I click on that, because I cancel that. If I click on fill and then select gradient, click on OK, and do the same thing, then I get the gradient color picker. So here you can you've got color stops, which are the colors, and then you have opacity at the top. So you can put, so if I want to fade from, let's go from let's make it like a nice kind of blue, you can just click in there and put in oh, that's looking nice. And then here I'm going to put in a red. Yeah, and then you can, if you want to get rid of one, you can click on delete, and then you can move the gradient across like that. Click on OK. Now if I want to change the angle of the gradient and the scale of the gradient, I need to click on the selection tool here, then click on the rectangle, and then I get, let's zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that even better. So I've got 2 points which I can then move around like so. Yep. You can also add a stroke to it. So this is the line around the outside of the object. If I click on stroke, again you got the similar kind of options, solid color, gradient, radial gradient. So let's select a solid color. Right next to stroke and the type of stroke it is, you can increase the pixel size of it, and you can, if you click on the box there, you can change the color and make all wonderful kind of 1980s video graphics with that. Yeah, let's just take the selection tool. Let's go back to home. So, oh, sorry, it's gone back into selection tool. Right. So you can see the bounding box around here. If I click on those, then we can resize it here, like so. If you move it around, you'll be familiar with these kind of controls if you've done anything in Illustrator that uses vector graphics. So this is a vector graphic. It's a series of points as opposed to a bitmap graphic that's a load of pixels. So this, you mean, you can make it really small or really large, and it sort of maintains its quality. So as I've been moving around here, if we look down now at the shape layer, we can now see the parameters for that shape. So we have a rectangle path, size, so you can resize it from there. position, roundness. Yeah, so that changes the curve on the corners. And then you also have like stroke, gradient fill, and then you have the transform parameters for the rectangle as well down here. When we transform the shape, it will be relative to its anchor point. So currently the anchor point is set to 0, 0, which should be in the center. Let's just put it back to 0, 0, let's type it in. So when I do rotate, it's rotating from the center, like so. If you want to change the anchor point, you just click and drag on those values. So if we move it to one of the edges and then we rotate it, you can see it rotates around that point. Same with the scale, it'll scale from that point too. And then we have opacity. So if you've seen the video before this, you'll be familiar with the idea that anything with a stopwatch on, you can animate. So any of these parameters, including the gradient and the stroke, can be animated. So let's have a look at the other shapes you can make. So there is a rounded rectangle tool. There is a ellipse tool, which will allow you to make circles. If you want to make a proper circle, you hold down the shift key and drag out, and that'll maintain its kind of ratio so that it's a perfect circle. You also have the Polystar tool, polygon tool, and you click and drag and you can create, I think it sort of defaults to a 5-sided shape. But if you want to change that, you go down to where in the shape layer where it says Polystar and transform Polystar and Polystar path. So here it describes how many points it has. So if you can increase that value or decrease it. So if you want 3, then you'll get a triangle. Yeah. And then pentagon, and then a hexagon, oh, and then a septagon, and an octagon. And if you change the inner and outer radius, hang on, which way round it is? Sorry. So the outer radius is the size of it, but if you go to type and click on star, then you get an inner and outer radius, which will give you the star shape. So, I mean, you can actually animate that, which would be kind of cool. Yeah. And you've got inner roundness and the outer roundness. So those are some of the basic shapes you can make. One thing to bear in mind with the shape layer, I'm just gonna, so the shape layer has content. So these are all the things in the shape layer, and you can apply an overall transformation to them. So if I go down to transformation here and I start scaling it, you'll notice it'll scale everything up. If I rotate it, it rotates everything. So once you create a number of shapes in the shape layer, they're kind of grouped together, and any kind of transformations you apply to that layer will affect all the shapes. Right, I'm just going to delete that all its contents because we're going to look at something else. So if I want to delete that, I'll just select it and delete. What I'm going to show you now is how you make a shape layer using the pen tool. So next to the shape tool, you've got this little pen tool. If you click on that, it'll automatically create a shape layer for you. So if we just click points in here, if you've used Illustrator, it's very similar. So you can create a shape with as many points as you want and join it up. Okay, and now we have a shape layer with a shape in it and a path and a stroke, gradient fill, all that malarkey. Yeah, you can also do curves with it as well. So if I click on the pen tool and convert vertex tool, if I click on that, then it's a bit difficult to see, but what I've got here is now a Bezier curve. So I can make it curved like so. And I can go into previous shapes that I've made and kind of create those curves. So you can make all manner of kind of funky shapes with that. There are some other features and things you can add to your shapes. So if we go here, you see the add button up here. It's also down here as well. So I'm going to click on shape 2 and I'm going to add trim paths. Okay, so this is I suppose a kind of an effect, and it has a start and an end point and an offset. So if I increase the start point, you can see it's how it kind of draws the shape out. If I decrease the end point and then move the offset, you can see it's moving around the path there. Let's just increase that a little bit more. Like so. We'll do the same to the other one. So let's go to shape 1 and let's select it, click add and trim paths, and then see what that does. So that's pretty cool. Let's just play around with the offset. So of course you can kind of animate that parameter. So let's just do that to show what it looks like. So click on the stopwatch and I've put in a keyframe here. Let's move it along to 4 seconds and let's increase the offset a few times and let's play that back. And then you've got that. Right, I'm just going to delete that layer again and show you some other things you can add. So I'm going to select the polygon tool. I'm going to create a nice pentagon. Let's just move that into the middle of the screen. And then I'm going to add pucker and bloat. Let's see what that does. So that kind of creates like a distortion, curves around the shape. Let's just get rid of that. You can also zigzag, and that's got a size and ridges per segment. So these are things, if you are familiar with Illustrator, they're very similar. You can make some really crazy shapes with these. You can also sort of layer up effects. So if we get that zigzag and then we add twist to that as well. Yeah. Like so. You can change the center of the twist. Again, you know, you can realize, you can animate all this. So that's what we're going to do hopefully in the next video, is I'm going to create a bit of a shape jam. Yeah. What else can we do with it? We can wiggle paths. So this is kind of a bit more random. You've got a random seed there, which changes the type of the random path, and you can change the size of it, the detail, how much it correlates to the actual shape you've made, temporal phase, so you can make it kind of wobble. Yeah, so I'll just animate that so you can see that in effect. So let's put a keyframe in. Let's move it on. Or maybe not that much, that's going to be crazy. Okay, there you go. Let's just get rid of that. And wiggle paths. And zigzag. And what else can we do? Repeater is quite a useful tool as well. So this gives you multiple copies of the same shape. Let's just, and what I'm going to do is transform that and make it a lot smaller. Let's just, yeah, make it smaller. So this gives you a number of copies with the amount of offset. Let's increase that. Offset it. You can also transform the repeater as well. So if I rotate it, it rotates them individually around like that. Again, all this you can animate. Start opacity, end opacity, so you can create kind of trail effects. You can change the scale. See, already we're getting some really kind of cool stuff. And you change the position, so they're much more tightly grouped. So in the next video, what I'll do is we'll go about sort of creating something, some kind of motion graphic, abstract, what I like to call a shape jam, with some of these effects.